Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today Mañana. I'm Alex. This is Xavier. We're very excited to have you joining us on a beautiful morning here in Charlottesville, Virginia. It is there's lots of beautiful leaves on the trees, even if there's less than Xavier would have wanted.
Nuts on the floor, pecans on the floor, there's walnuts on the floor, all kinds of things.
There's lots of things, lots of enjoyable things.
The squirrels are busy, I can tell you that much.
Squirrels are very busy.
Up and down.
With their acorns, they are very busy.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for before, acorns. There's acorns
Instead
everywhere. Well, there's black walnuts and acorns, right?
Okay.
I mean, where we are, right? Mm-hmm. And so the acorns is just like there's hundreds of them.
Yep.
And I see them go up there and they jump up and down on the branches and they just keep falling. So every time, because that's where my compost is, so every time I go out there, it's like it's raining acorns and they hit me on the head and I got to wear a hard hat going out there.
There you go. Well, somebody's got to do what you got to do. But it is this weather. It's a beautiful time to grab your café con leche, get into a cozy place, and watch some Today Mañana.
Absolutely.
Because we've got finance topic.
Yes.
Multiple finance topics. When we have a finance show, we have many.
Well, when you and I start talking, we could just kind of go from one to
the other. No, what I'm saying is that when we've got guests, you get a finance topic. On a day like today, you get a whole finance show. You get multiple topics all in one shot. You get topics. We have charts. We have numbers. Xavier came very prepared, so he has a lot that he wants to talk about, and of course, love being here.
Always.
On the I Love CVille Network set. Of course, Judah Whittower behind the camera making us all look good. Thanks to Emergent Financial Services, our presenter, and our fantastic partners, Matthias and Realty for Adelante. So we appreciate everyone.
All the partners, and all the viewers, too.
And all the viewers. Be sure to send us
any questions. And if they have any questions, comments.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Let us know. Dr. Elizabeth Urpí is watching along with Maria.
Maria, she's probably smiling right now.
She's very focused. She's making sure that
she's seeing that voice. She's listening to that voice. I said, I know that voice. I know that voice.
Wants to make sure I don't make any mistakes, or else I will get the judgment face if I make a mistake. So we don't want that. We don't want
that. That's for sure.
We don't want to be judged to be less than competent. So it's wonderful to be here. In honor of Michael, UVA football still doing well.
Yes, they really are. I mean, they've been a pleasant surprise, at least from my perspective.
Tell me about it. I would have settled for 6 wins.
Yeah. And
instead, we're 8-1, and the season's not over yet.
I know. Well, there's a few important games coming down.
You just know that what's going to happen is we're going to go into the last game of the season against
don't say
Tech.
that. And
if we win the game, we go to the ACC championship game, and if we lose, we don't. And you just know, you know it. You know that in a year in which Tech is not very good and we are very good.
Not very good is being complimentary.
Well, I think they've won their last 2 games.
Oh, have they? Okay.
Yeah. So they're not like awful. I mean, they're bad enough that they fired their coach, but they're not like, the worst team ever.
Yeah.
But you just know that in a year in which otherwise that game will be meaningless, things will transpire such that game will be the difference between going to the ACC championship or not. Know it.
It's a rivalry, and you get up for it. I remember. So when I went to Xavier High School, our nemesis or our rival was Fordham, right? And every Christmas, every Thanksgiving Day, we had the football game, right? So we'd go there to different places, right? Mm-hmm. But one time we went to Fordham, and this is literally my first year at Xavier. And our team was supposed to be better. We lose. The following year, our team was like lousy, right? Go to Thanksgiving game. They were supposed to beat us, and we beat them. So it's just, you just never know. I mean, you're disappointed because when your team is good, you think you're going to win.
Yeah.
But there's just that game is completely different.
Whatever's worse, that game is their season.
That's right.
Like
exactly.
Let's face it, Virginia Tech is not going anywhere this year, right? That their season, whether it's a good or bad season, will be determined by whether or not they beat us in that game.
Exactly.
Whereas UVA is going to have the pressure of, man, if we win this game, we might go to the ACC championship game.
Yeah.
Well,
hopefully, because they still got to play Duke and.
So that's what I'm telling you. I just know that.
You know that's going to happen.
Well, I'm pretty sure if we would have win the next 2 games, that last game would not matter.
Yeah.
But we will probably lose to Duke or something, beat Wake, lose to Duke, and therefore the last game will matter.
I guess. I
think if we beat Duke and Wake Forest, I don't think it will matter because we'll have no ACC losses.
Okay.
And so I don't think it would matter whether or not we lose to Tech. I don't think anyone would be able to catch us at that point.
Yeah.
But
it would matter for other
If
reasons.
we lose a different game. It's like, oh no, it doesn't matter. And you just know it. You know it. But at least an 8-1 season so far is.
It's been
no matter what, it's
yeah.
going to be their best season in like a decade.
Yeah, no, it's been a great season. It
So
really
it's
has
been
been
enjoyable.
you know?
By the skin of their teeth, but still enjoyable.
Well, listen, I mean, look at Georgia. That's what I keep saying. I see Georgia, and it's like,
Their team's winning by the skin of their teeth.
They keep winning these miracle games at the end, and I mean, I guess that listen, you need to learn how to win sometimes, right? And that's important.
Well, sometimes you do win the miracle games, and then you crush everybody in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you gotta. That's why you play the game to see what happens.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was good. Yeah. So it's good.
I had to throw that in there because if Michael had been on with me, I know he would have.
Oh, he would have loved to talk about
it.
that.
He would have talked about it. Yeah. All righty. So that brings us to our
topics
for the day. And I think you wanted to start with, I don't know, just some numbers you've been seeing and things that have come up. I know, obviously, Michael and I talked a little bit about Federal Reserve lowering interest rates last time around.
Right.
Now we just got, I think ADP was a little higher than expected. We're not going to get non-farm payrolls or GDP for a while. So all we have is the Atlanta Fed's GDP predictor for our third quarter, because that due to the shutdown, we're not going to get that official number for a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And I think the third quarter is looking very, very good right now. Right. It's the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter is going to be the challenge because with the government shutdown, that obviously puts
government spending's in GDP.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even though I think Nicholas would strongly argue that it shouldn't be.
I think most people would agree with that. Yeah.
But it is in GDP.
So the only way they spend is with your money and my money.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's an easily controllable factor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I want GDP to go up, spend more money. I want GDP to go down, spend less money.
Yeah, exactly.
That usually is
and that's
what
not
you're trying
something
to
you want to happen.
Yeah, you want to measure what the economy is doing, not what you can what levers you can control. But yeah, fourth quarter probably we'll see some government spending down, obviously.
Yes, for sure.
So that may impact the number, but at least right now, Atlanta's Fed is predicting a 4% for the third quarter.
For the third quarter, yeah, and that is a very good number. Yeah, that's a very good number. I think the challenge that I see going forward, right, and it's mostly from the perspective of the markets. I mean, the markets has just been extremely strong, right, and you always sit there and go, because we've begun to expect that the markets seem to go up forever until they just crash, right? I mean, if you look at the last 10 years, that seems to be the case. You don't have markets that are, I can't remember last time the S&P was just up 5 or 6%. It just seemed very high, or boom, they just crashed, right? So you sit there, you've had back-to-back years of very good, strong years, and it's like, at what point does this market, just, take a dive, right?
Yeah.
Or something happens, and it's the black swan events that really are, get you nervous, right? But there's just a lot of things that are, there's a lot of indicators out there that things aren't as smooth as one would, have expected, right? And one of the numbers, for example, that I saw, and this is literally over the last 3 years, that about 10% of the top 10% of households spend 50% of or represent 50% of spending, 50% right?
Of consumer spending.
And that's a huge number, right? So in other words, if you think about it, yes, every time the stock market is up really, really well, right? The top 10% said, hey, I just made another, 10, 15, 20% in my funds, right? And I'm just going to spend it, right?
Yep.
So they spend it, right? It's the middle class, right, and the lower income class that really isn't able to spend as much as they want.
Which would explain a lot of what we've been seeing. Is we've been sitting here since the beginning of 2024. We've been sitting here on this show saying consumer debt was approaching $1 trillion and then surpassed $1 trillion in January 1st of this year. Suddenly it was over $1 trillion, right? And we've been sitting there saying, with all this debt, how is consumer spending still going up? And I said, well, because a small portion of people who don't have all this debt are spending a whole bunch of money.
Exactly.
Which would explain how, despite the inflation, despite the consumer debt, consumer spending has still been positive this year.
Exactly. And so the question beckons is, is the consumer debt that is being accumulated by mostly, middle class, right? Is it to survive, or is it to purchase, right? Or is it to enjoy life? Because, I think after COVID, I think a lot of people decided, I'm not going to wait till tomorrow to enjoy my life. I'm going to take my vacations now, right? So I think that's happening a little bit too. Those are question marks, right? At least in my head, is like, at what point do you start saying, these markets have done very, very well, but can they continue, right? And granted, I mean, you look at the Magnificent Seven, and the first quarter this year, they look terrible,
finally
right?
Becoming dead,
exactly.
Earth, and now
but they have just catapulted back to the top, right? Pushing that S&P 500 and the growth index. But the one surprising index, I think, which you and I talked about at the beginning of the year, was really the Russell 2000, which is the small caps, right? The small companies, right?
Well, we thought that finally they might begin to turn around.
Exactly.
And they have in the second half.
Yeah, and for the last 6 months, I mean, I think they are, other than the NASDAQ, they're the best performing, sector, right? Which is what you and I were kind of expecting to happen eventually. And you look at the last 10, 15 years, small caps have really underperformed dramatically, especially once interest rates rose. And those companies are the ones that struggle the most, right? Because it's kind of ironic that, I mean, it is the way it should be, but it's ironic that you're a small company and you need to borrow funds to get your company going or expanding. And those funds are very expensive because you're small, right? So they, they're usually, their interest rates are, 2%, 3%, 4% higher than what, a Costco, P&G, or those big companies will pay, all right? So, of course, when interest rates rise, then they're at that borderline saying, I'm borrowing out at 10%. And my return on investment has to be greater than 10%. Can I do that, right? While the other companies, the big companies, the value companies, are borrowing still at 4, 5, 6%, which is very reasonable for them, right? So we figured if interest rates begin to come down, we would expect that sector maybe finally gets off the ground. Now, again, the issue with an index like the Russell 2000 is that you have 2,000 companies, right?
So many companies.
There are so many companies in there that, they're going to struggle.
By definition, a large number, the issue is when you have 2,000 small cap companies, by definition, a large number of them are not actually going to make it. They will fall out of that index.
Exactly.
But they will, of course, drag down performance before they leave.
That's right. Exactly. So while, that doesn't happen in the, in the S&P 500, that doesn't happen in the Russell growth companies, because those companies are already very well established, right? So that's what happens in the sense of those particular indices are very good when markets are going up, and even markets are stable in the sense that, they're much more stable. And in the small caps is where you can have the huge gains, right? Because if the economy begins to really perform as one would hope in the near future, right? In the sense that it is a better domestically, it's a better economy than from a global perspective, right? We're trying to bring back more manufacturing, et cetera, right? Then the small companies will do much better, right? In that scenario, and that's what you're hoping for. And so, and again, finding the sweet spots in those particular sectors, small caps, is what you have to try to do, right? In other words, it's easy to say I'll just buy the index, but again, that index isn't representative of what can happen.
Well, and it is probably a place. In other words, it's difficult to look at the S&P 500 and say, okay, I'm going to go into the S&P 500 and find added value. Because I think every active manager to tell you it's been almost impossible to beat the S&P 500 as a whole over the past decade.
Yeah. The only way to beat it really lately is either bet for the Magnificent Seven or against it. If you bet against it, you always underperform. So
if you bet against them, you always underperform. I guess you have to overweight them is the only way to beat it. But Russell 2000 is probably a place where if you wisely allocate them on certain areas, certain sectors, you can probably find some added value there. Given that the index as a whole just has so many what will be underperformers.
Yeah. And we've seen that, and we've done so much research, especially in the biotech industry, where there are companies that do extremely well, and then they die out, or they do extremely well and they continue to do well, and there are companies that just never even get off the ground, right? So that's a microcosm of that particular index, and we've seen that happen there. Clean energy was another example where,
Mm-hmm.
that was an area where, you focus on that sector, but, there was just so many companies in there that in one particular time period, they got so many subsidies that they forgot that, those are great subsidies and you're making, you're getting a lot of money from quote unquote the government.
You have to find
but eventually you got to turn a profit. You have to create a product that people want, right?
The problem is not only do they, so the issue is they didn't just like underperform, they crashed and brought down the index entirely.
Yes, exactly. Right. So all these sectors, right, are important to look at and say, where is it that we believe truly the growth to be, right? And then even within that sector, then you have to find, who is doing the right job in picking particular companies that may produce the kind of returns that you're looking for, which is north of whatever the S&P, the growth companies are doing, right? So again, that's just a lot of homework that you have to do in that sector. In the other sectors, there's less homework, right? That you have to do. It's just an asset allocation perspective. Yeah. So those are things. And this year, I know you and I have also. We've never been enamored of the international sector, especially in the equity. I mean, we like emerging markets, ex-China, for different reasons.
Developed international has never been our
exactly.
favorite place.
And you look at the last 20 years, that market has underperformed the S&P 500 hugely. I mean,
by half, essentially.
In some cases by almost half, right? Different ETFs are produce different results, but as far as the index is concerned, it's pretty close half, right? So you sit there and go, why am I investing in international equities, right? When basically those are developed countries, right? So we already are a developed country. So why not keep my funds here as opposed to put it in an international arena where now you're taking currency risk, right? So either you have to hedge that currency risk, which is expensive, right? Or you have to take the risk, and if the dollar goes up, you underperform, right? So this was one year, though, that the dollar certainly has had a decline in its value, and so the international sector has done well. And again, mostly the first 3 months.
Well, and ironically, because of currency.
Oh yeah, mostly currency. Absolutely.
So in other words, you're having been in there, you may have a positive return vis-a-vis the dollar, but did you buy international stocks because you were trying to play currencies? Because I think a lot of people who are in international stocks, that's not their intended goal.
No, exactly. I mean,
I'll give you
an example. The DAX index, right, which is a German index, all right, is up for this year, all right, is up 33%. In the last 6 months, is up 4%, right? So basically, when the dollar began to either kind of plateau, right, or start to go up a little bit, which is what's happened over the last since kind of June, actually probably the end of April, the end of May, the dollar plateaued in the sense that it stopped going down, right, and now it's started to go up a little bit. Those indices, all the international indices, have underperformed the S&P 500 again, right? So for the year, it's still up because obviously the dollar was down quite a lot at the beginning of the year, the first 3 months, in the fear of tariffs, et cetera. But again, it's a currency game. So I sit there and go, if you want to pay the currency game, there's other ways to do that. You can take.
Well, and again, if you have been trying to avoid the currency game and you hedged those international equities, your return probably is
absolutely.
Not the same.
Yeah. No, it isn't. Yeah. Those hedge portfolios are definitely not the same. Yeah, their returns are nowhere close to what they were if you just stayed in there. Yeah, and took that currency risk. So again, the dollar looks like has kind of stabilized a little bit.
Which means I'm guessing on the flip side, gold has stabilized in the other direction. Just gold skyrocketed earlier this year.
Yeah, gold had an enormous year this year so far. But over the last, I would say probably about 3 weeks or so, it came down. Now it's kind of stabilized a little bit more. And again, the dollar, so I guess there were some, two things happened, right? The dollar kind of goes up and down based on not only inflation, but also what interest rates you can get in different countries, right? And so I think there's a dichotomy there for the dollar. And for gold, though, it's mostly inflation fear, right? And I think the inflation fear really was instilled when, obviously this new administration came in because everybody knew they're going to put tariffs. And that the assumption was that was going to, be inflationary, and so everybody rushed into gold, right? And I think the feeling is that although we haven't seen it yet, people still feel, and you still read some economists that eventually it's going to happen. We're going to get an inflation spike because of that. Whether we do or not, it's hard to tell. How long companies are willing to absorb some of that cost, and my suspicion is if you're an international company, right, and you sell product to the U.S. and what you sell is to the U.S. is a large portion of what you sell globally, you're going to eat a lot of that, right?
Well,
because you still want that. You also want that share, right?
Yeah. It also depends on if you actually have any competition.
Right.
If you have domestic U.S. competition, then the issue is it's not as though you can pass on the tariffs so that your price is now higher than the U.S. price. That doesn't work, because then people will just change the goods they purchase.
Which is what the goal is.
Which is what the goal is, right? So you have your ability to pass on the tariff is limited by the actual price that people can get in the market.
Yeah. And like I said, so it's a market share game, right? In other words, am I willing to lose market share? Because we all know market share is a finicky thing, right? In other words, you stay with a product all your life, all of a sudden you find something better, you try it, you like it, you're done. You never go back to the other one because like, hey, I like this one. If it's cheaper, it's like, wow, it's cheaper and it's just as good, why not? Or it's better, I'm paying a little more, but it's better, I'm good to go, right? So no matter what, market share is a game that you just don't want to lose, right? And so a lot of those companies, like, I'm not willing to lose market share, right? So I'll eat the cost, because eventually, it's a one-time deal. Even for them, it's a one-time deal. Prices go up, and then after that,
Powell essentially said as much.
Yes.
That he came to realize that a tariff increase is a one-time. It's not an ongoing inflation. It's a one-time increase in prices. Therefore, it doesn't cause endless inflation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, the world's changing. Ever since computers became part of our world, it's just the world changes exponentially faster, right? Because now you have AI, you have robotics, so all that changes the dynamic of our economy dramatically, right? So in other words, and we see that across the board. I mean, in our business, there are people who use AI to invest portfolios, which I disagree with, but anyway, it is what it is, right? That's what people are using in some cases, right? But more and more companies using AI. I forget who it was. I called somebody the other day, and there was a person that kept responding, right? And I asked a question, responding, and it wasn't a person. And at the end it says, we use now AI to filter calls and whatever. So literally, this is not a person speaking to you. This is AI. Oh, here's the question. As the answer, right? But you never get to ask the precise questions. Like, that's a simple question. My question is much deeper than that. I just got to get to a person, right?
Exactly.
So I got to go through a 15-minute, 20-minute phone call talking to an AI person, so I can get to a real person and say, I have a simple question, but you know what? For some reason, the AI wasn't really answering the simple question. It kept like one of those
circles.
Yeah, exactly, infinity circle, right? But that is helping certainly many companies, right? So you don't have a person there answering the phone anymore. You have AI, right? So that's a lot cheaper, right? Robotics, same thing. I mean, in some cases, robots can work 24 hours a day. They don't need healthcare. So there's an area where if it's a situation where it's, screwing a bolt into a car, day in, day out, and, every 5 minutes, a robot's doing it, right? Robot breaks, you fix them, put them back together, good to go, right? So again, there's a lot of changes going on in our economy, right? Which means that going forward, how do we make sure that some of these jobs that used to be there, right, are no longer there? How do we deploy those particular people to have other jobs, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's going to be important and critical.
Yeah, it's one of the big changes. You even think about something like coding and so forth.
Yeah.
A lot of people came out of school with coding degrees and it said, well, if AI can code,
I know.
Then what are you there unless you go work for the AI company?
That's right, yeah.
To begin with.
Yeah.
But it just transforms a lot of how we do things. And again, that's what industrial revolutions do, right? A whole bunch of jobs disappear, and the question is what shows up that you didn't think of right now.
Exactly.
So I think we're undergoing that at the same time that we have kind of a little bit of mixed signals as far as the economy goes, right? You have inflation that obviously is no longer at 9%, 6%. I mean, we're hovering between 2 and 3, right? So, and that's not going to go negative. I think that's something we've been repeating for like.
You mean inflation?
3 years now, right? That when we would tell people you want inflation to go down, but when we say we want inflation to go down, what we mean is that the rate at which prices go up goes down,
right?
Because there's only one scenario I know of where prices go down, and that's recession, and you don't want that, right? And even then, sometimes recession brings inflation close to zero, but it doesn't turn negative.
Exactly.
It's usually depressions where prices actually go down, right? So what we're seeing is a better inflation picture. Rates have come down, all right? GDP, at least for the third quarter, is looking pretty good. Stock market has done well. But then you have here these kind of tailwinds, well, headwinds, I should say, of debt, how sustainable is consumer spending actually, which is 70% of the economy, right? So a lot of, I think, next year's bet is going to be, okay, there is now more certainty as far as the tax situation goes, but is that got taken care of?
Right.
So do you see business investment, that other piece of the economy, do you see business investment pick up where government spending and consumer spending may lag? And is that enough to offset?
And I think the answer is yes, right? So I mean, I think we began to see that already in the third quarter, right? And if you remember the very first quarter of this year, that was kind of the difference was the fact that we had, essentially a big investment by companies buying foreign product because they were afraid of the tariffs.
Well, business investment was up big, but what happened was imports were so much higher than exports that it turned GDP negative.
So that was a negative for the economy in the first quarter, and we saw the reversal of that in the second quarter. But we're also beginning to see businesses pick up as far as their investments are concerned. Now, again, I think the government shutdown is going to cause some issues here, right? And so, if you're a business saying there's a government shutdown, these people aren't getting paid. They're going to get paid eventually, right? Yep. I mean, they're furloughed now, so it's not like they're not going to get paid. They're going to get paid, right? But that means the government right now is not spending. So as a business, do you say, do I spend now this quarter, or am I going to wait for the next quarter? Because, hey, I mean, by the time next quarter rolls around, if the government shutdown ends anytime in the next couple of months, there's going to be a huge amount of money being sent to these people, and they're going to have, in most cases, a surplus, right? I mean, they've some people I know have been taking money out of their Roths and other areas where they might to reinvest those, right? Replenish those. But in essence, humans are what they are. They all of a sudden they get a $10,000 check, and it's like, wow, $10,000. That feels good now, right? They don't think about that. That was my salary for the last 4 weeks, whatever. So I think. Businesses are probably putting a little hold on right now and saying, I have to wait and see what happens here before I reinvest my funds. Or maybe it's the opposite. They may say, I got to be ready for the first quarter of next year, right?
I need to have the product ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, again, these are always question marks, right? So from an investment point of view, you always have to figure out, where are you on these cycles? What sectors make sense? What part of the, again, one of the things that you and I talk about a lot now is really, tax-aware investment, right? And those are for folks that aren't in retirement funds. They just have a regular brokerage, where it means that every time you have a capital gain or interest, those funds are taxable, right? We live in a world now where, you have the ability to do, in your portfolios what only institutions could do in the past, right? And that is an amazing opportunity for individuals where you can literally manage a portfolio with awareness to the tax consequences. And that means that you can create a portfolio that not only grows, but also minimizes your tax burden, right? And that is just fantastic. And again, on the institutional basis, we used to do that a lot, but the opportunities weren't there for the retail investor back then, right? Now they're there. I mean, there are like over 3,000 mutual funds, ETFs out there, right? And there are just so many that you can literally create portfolios that look like an institutional portfolio, right? And then manage it in such a way that you can minimize taxes, still have the growth you want, still have the income you want, and those are just fabulous opportunities. So again, it's investing is not just figuring out what's going to happen in the future, but what can I do today to, one, make sure I have the income that I need, make sure that income, if possible, is minimizing my taxes, and two, I have the growth that I need, and two, I want to be in a situation where that growth is good for me, but I don't want to be handcuffed. And by handcuffed, I mean, sometimes people, let's say you bought Apple in back when, now you still have Apple in your portfolio, but
congratulations, it's gone up
5,000%.
And you're sitting there saying, man, I can't sell this thing or else
I got to pay capital.
Exactly.
So there are ways around that where you can still have the growth, right? But you don't have to worry about, if you need to make some kind of shift in your portfolio because it makes sense, you don't have to worry and sit there, I got to pay capital taxes, right? Capital gain taxes. So again, these, in some cases, right, you have, I guess, again, the computer, the opportunities have changed the way the economies work, so you have to pay attention to that, but it also has helped the investor, right? And it certainly has helped registered investment advisors help our clients
to be able to do more.
Because we can really sit down with our clients and try to figure out what is your goal with these funds, what are you trying to accomplish.
Well, that's what people need to comprehend. There's so much more that goes into a portfolio construction at this point than merely guessing which direction the market is going to go or what's going to go up or what's going to go down.
Yeah.
In other words, so much of it is, okay, how do I put together the income that you need in such a way that it's not, I haven't put it together in such a way that you need the market to go up to attain this income. No, you can construct it in such a way that, okay, this is what you're going to get, right? And there may be small fluctuations, but you're not, the entirety of the performance that a certain person needs is not coming from a guess as to what direction the economy or interest rates are going. It's coming from putting the right pieces in place such that this is what's being generated from a mathematical standpoint, this is what you need, and the goal is kind of to eliminate the need to worry about those fluctuations, eliminate the need for the market to go up in order to actually attain your goals.
Exactly, and that's the key word. It's you don't need the market to go up to be able to achieve your particular goals, right? In other words, what is it that you need on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, yearly basis, or certainly if you're young, you might say, no, I don't really think I need this, right? Because I'm already doing well with my retirements. This I want to invest in such a way that hopefully I don't need it, but if I do, I want to make sure that I haven't lost money, right? So again, there are different reasons to create particular strategies for portfolios, but my point is that there's just so many opportunities, so many ways of doing that in today's environment for registered investment advisors that it's just a whole different game. It's a whole different opportunity that we certainly take advantage for our clients, and I think most registered investment advisors probably do the same. And this is what I was talking about AI. In other words, an AI portfolio doesn't sit there and try to figure out specifics with their clients, saying this is what I need, this is what I'm looking for, but I also may need this, or I may want it for that. And so how do you create a portfolio in that situation, right? Because you're no longer looking backwards. The problem with AI is it looks backwards. What did well in the past? Okay, let's go ahead and do that, right? Well, no, that's not the key. The key is, what is it that we're trying to achieve? Where are we in today's market? What looks attractive? What doesn't look attractive? What is going to provide the yield that we need? And that's what we need to invest in right now, going forward, to achieve the goals that the particular client's looking for, right?
And so, we've had clients, just for fun, that they've plugged basics about their situation into like ChatGPT and some of these AIs, and they've gotten back absurd answers that even they are like, I don't think that's the right portfolio. I mean, exactly. I can't see how that would fit my needs. Because again, it's you need both the backwards looking, right? Because it's not like you and I don't say, okay, what happened last time? This happened. What happened?
Right.
But also that forward thinking to be able to say, okay, for all right, I know that's what happened in the past, but I also can see how it's different this time. And B, to be able to say, okay, but my client's particular needs are A, B, C, D, but also this might happen, but also that might happen, but also they may need this in 6 months. And there's so many pieces that go into that you need to be able to put them all together. And computers are just not at that point yet.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, so again, it's, these are, the charts, everything that I run, they're just, I like to look at them because, and again, markets don't go up steady over time, right? No. And one of the things that, one of the areas, for example, when you think about taxes, right, and investment in opportunities, the fixed income market is a greater opportunity than the equity market when it comes to tax loss harvesting to a certain respect, right? And the difference is that also in the equity market, you can have markets continue to go up, just basically 1 year and the next year and the next year. So you sit there, you go, yeah, there's no pullback, right?
I mean, think about it. You could do a great tax loss harvesting team. You have all these different sectors. You've split it all up. You've got all these different companies. If every single one of them goes up for the next 2 years, there's no tax loss.
Yeah, but I mean, just relationship-wise, right? In other words, we always look at the asset allocation, and again, we look at small caps, mid caps, value, growth, whatever, right? In different sectors, try to see what's going on, right? But nothing says that tech can't go up this year and next year and the following year and the following year. So you sit there.
And they're all kind of positively correlated. There really is no sector of the stock market you're like, oh yeah, if this one goes up, that one has to go down. Well, no.
Exactly. Yeah.
Every sector of the S&P 500 can go up at the same time.
Absolutely. While bonds are mathematics. So basically, there is no way that a particular sector in the bond market can continue to go up forever, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, and just make it simple. Right? You take AAA corporate bonds, right? Let's say they're trading at 5%, and treasuries are trading at 4.7%, right? Mm-hmm. So you got a little advantage. Well, there isn't a time eventually where AAA corporate bonds can trade at 3%, because you're sitting there going, wait a minute, a corporate bond's at 3%, but a treasury is at 4.75%. Who would buy a riskier security?
The moment the corporate bond, because as people buy the corporate bond, right, the interest rate comes down. The moment that corporate bond hits the same interest rate as the treasury, that's it.
Right. I mean, yeah.
You'd have to be a little crazy to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this riskier bond and get less return.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, since bonds are mathematics, right? The opportunities to shift from one particular sector, area of the bond market, maturity, risk profile in the sense of credit quality, which is now available to you, right? Municipals, right? Municipals versus treasuries, municipals versus corporate bonds. All those numbers, all those statistics are there now that you can say, it's time to get out of munis and buy corporate bonds, or it's time to get out of corporate bonds, buy munis. So there's just so many opportunities out there from a bond perspective, a fixed income perspective, that
you also
it's
have the
easier.
Interesting income versus return dichotomy.
Yes.
Because if you have bond funds that pay out large quantities of income, they also may appear to have a price loss, right? So you sit there and say, okay, well, I got 10% from this bond. Its price went down 2%. So I got 8.
Right.
But when I sell that thing, I have a 2% realized loss.
Exactly.
Which I can now use to offset a different
strategy, which I need to get out of.
Exactly. Get out of.
Yes. Yeah.
So you do things because there is a difference. There is a distinction there, which is different than stocks. Because let's face it, with bonds, most of your return is probably going to come from income.
Coupon, yeah. The coupon is the majority of
your return.
Exactly.
With stocks, a dividend is always going to be the minority of your return.
That's right.
Stocks pay such small dividends, you're never going to sit there. Only in a down year would, or something. But like in other words, in any given year, think about what's the S&P 500 up this year? It's
the S&P 500 is up 16% this year.
So think about it. With a 3% dividend rate, 3 out of 16,
which is not even 3 anymore.
It's not even 3 anymore. That was being generous.
Yes.
In other words, by far the majority of your return, most of the time, is going to be the price change.
Absolutely. Exactly.
So, but bonds is different. So you could actually have a positive return with a negative capital gain.
Correct. Yeah.
In the bond.
Yeah. exactly. And then, like I said, it's because bonds are math, right? So sooner or later, there's that relationship. Once it changes, it can no longer continue to change any further because who in their crazy mind would buy a high yield bond at a lower rate than a AAA corporate bond or a treasury, right? Nobody would do that, right? So you get to that spot where it's like, this no longer has value, right? So I need to get out of here and buy something else that has more value, right? So the opportunity to make these kind of shifts in fixed income is greater than it is in the stock market, because the stock market is not quote unquote mathematical in the sense that something can go up forever. Right? Nothing says that it has to stop going up, right? Well, in bonds, that's not the case. So again, when we look at tax aware investments on the fixed income side, is where the majority of opportunities occur, and we can do a lot more there.
Absolutely.
And they're good. They're good. So again, all this again. These are all the charts that we look at, right? Yep. So we look at the relationship between a number of sectors, maturities. Same thing in the equity side, just to see what that relationship looks like, and is it meaningful, right? Again, on the bond side, it's mathematics, so it's easy. On the equity side, we sit there and go, is this real? Is it going to continue? Those are more challenging because it's not a known factor. It's, what do you think is going to happen? What is happening? What made this sector move so quickly, so fast? Is it what somebody said? Was it a piece of research? Or is it the economy changing, right? So all that goes into making a decision as to what sector in the equity market makes some sense, and will it continue to make sense, right? So this is a lot that goes on. That's what makes my job fun.
Yeah, and that's our run through for a lot of the news. That's been a lot of the numbers that have been out there. Just maybe giving people an idea how those numbers react to. So a lot of times you're like, okay, there's all these economic numbers, there's all these things, there's all these markets. How does that impact my 401k? Well, this is how.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, all these pieces filter down into your actual 401k and make up what the return will eventually be. And so you can, and it's far more than just, okay, did the market go up or down?
Right.
Predicting there's a thing in markets called translation risk. And translation risk is the risk that you predict what's going to happen correctly, but don't actually make any money off it. And that's the key. The key, because predicting what's going to happen is not sufficient.
Yeah, you have to act on it, right?
You have to act on it, and in such a way that you did it correctly. Because you could sit there and say, AI is going to go up. AI is going to go up. And there's these 3 AI companies, I'm going to buy them, right? Well, if you picked the 3 losers and the other 40 AI companies went up, you had big translation risk. Your risk materialized. You had the right idea, but you didn't actually make any money off it.
Yeah.
And so that's a key piece of how you construct something, is you just predicting what's going to happen is not sufficient to make money. It's how do I design this in such a way that it works for the person I'm designing the portfolio for.
That's very good. No, and that is true. That's true because, that happens. I think that happens to everybody in their lives. I mean, at least in our business, where you feel strongly about something, but then you don't do anything about it. And then you kick yourself. It's like, I did all the research and I knew it was going to happen, but yet I didn't do anything about it. Why was that, right? Because I think it's human nature always to second guess yourself.
Yep.
But sometimes you just have to say, if you do the work, if you put in the work, there's a difference between having a gut feel.
Yep.
Oh, my gut feel is that this is going to happen. Well, that's great. That's casino playing, right?
Yep.
That's just, my gut feel is that I'm going to roll a 7, or a roll an 11, whatever that number is supposed to be, right? But in the fixed income world, in the investment world, that's not good enough. You got to do the work, the research, and then if the numbers show that that's what you think is going to happen, go ahead. Doesn't mean it will, but you've done the research, and at least you have a rationale as to why you did what you did, and that's all you can do, right? Because we all know things don't always happen the way you expect them to happen, and that's just part of life. But at least if you did the work, it's better than if you didn't do the work and say, I thought the stock was going to go up, and boy, it really didn't go up. Yeah. What made you think that? It's how I got to feel. That's not a good reason.
That's not good.
Yeah. No client would say that. That's the best reason I've heard so far.
Great job, Xavier.
So yeah, but you're right. And I remember that happening when I worked in Wall Street. I was traveling. And we had put a position to where we were long the long bond, right, in the futures market. And I was at a conference, and I called the person that was kind of backing me up, and I said, "Get rid of the futures because it's like we've done well. Just get rid of it." Okay. So I go back to the office, and I see the position. I said, "I told you to get rid of it." He says, "Yeah, but you didn't call back to confirm." I said, "Never in my life did I call back ever to confirm it. If I tell you something, you got to do it." He says, "Yeah, but I was really nervous because it's a big position." I said, "You should be nervous not doing what I told you to do."
Yeah, exactly.
So that was one of those things where it's like, I cannot believe that this didn't happen. I mean, it's just literally the next or 2 days, the market just went down. And I'm saying, yes. And then I go back to the office, like, we just lost a lot of money in this futures contract, So I wasn't very happy. But, that's the problem is,
translation risk.
Sometimes, exactly.
Right idea doesn't happen.
People get nervous, and it's like, But, yeah, that's important. It's important to act on your work, the work that you did. Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there was just I don't know we got time. Just one little thing, right?
Absolutely,
So
we got time.
only because this is this to me is, and we talked a little bit about it in the car, right? So I had read this. It says that the average reading and math scores of American high school seniors fell to their lowest levels in 2 decades in 2024, right? And you and I, thought about that.
That was what generation is this seniors?
Yeah, that's the COVID kind of era, right? But I mean, one of the things that I worry about is the education of our country. We spend a lot of money, but we don't seem to be getting the results. And that's not good. And again, don't want to blame everything on phones, but I just think that in today's world, people spend a lot more time on their phones looking up quick information, but not learning.
They did a brain scan recently on people that began to use AI to write their emails, or like their things. Where in other words, you plugged a couple prompts, say AI write me this, telling this person that, and it does it for it. And I guess they had these people in a study and they did a little brain scan on it. They realized that their brain function was declining. In other words, having this thing do stuff for you actually was making you less able to then eventually do it for yourself if you needed to.
Yeah.
And you just see the ways in which lower attention spans, immediate information, having AI give you the answer when you type it in on Doodle instead of having to actually do the research yourself. The problem is not only do you become more reliant on these things, but your ability to do it itself declines because the brain is a muscle. So if you stop using it.
Yeah. And it's funny. So I was at a conference call 3 weeks ago with a client and somebody that does research for them, right? And they were saying that so many of the people that were in my client's position, right, now use, GPT or whatever AI to write their investment policies, right? Wow. And I'm sitting there and saying, the issue with that, listen, most investment policies are very similar for a lot of these particular places, right? However, in writing an investment policy, the whole point of it is saying, is this, first of all, can we invest in this based on, the city's guidelines, the county's guidelines, the state guidelines, whatever guidelines, right? And two, what is the risk reward for our portfolio? Is that something that we're willing to do? Can somebody give me that idea, right? So by the time you finish investing, like you said, you've used your brain to try to find out, is this the right way to do it? Why is it?
In the process of writing it is when you change your mind. You start writing your investment policy. This is this guy's policy. Let me put it here. And you're like, I don't think that fits. And then before you know it, your investment policy looks different than the one you were going to write in the first place. And I was talking about this with an English major recently. I said, because a lot of kids and some professors are not minded anymore if the kids use ChatGPT to help them write the essay.
Wow.
Right? They give because you give the idea and the prompt, and then it spits out nicely worded version of your idea. And I said the problem with that though is how many of us have been there, right? You start to, here's my essay idea, I'm going to write it. You get the writer's block. You're thinking of what to do, and before you know it, it's like, this idea is not that great. I think what I really want to say is this.
Right.
And your final essay topic is not the topic you started out with. So what happens? You got changed and your ideas changed in the process of actually having to write the thing.
Exactly.
Well, if you just give it to the ChatGPT and it writes the essay for you, that never happens.
Yeah.
So you're going to end up with your original idea. And if your original idea wasn't very good, well, guess what? The AI doesn't say, I'm not going to write this essay for you because this idea is not very good. Right? It's just going to spit out whatever garbage you gave it. It's going to spit garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's going to be well worded, nicely written garbage, but it's going to spit out the same thing. So the problem is you're the one who's losing.
Yes.
Like the essay that the professor gets may be better than what you could have written yourself, but you just lost out because your brain, instead of learning how to change its mind and maybe come up with this other idea, never happened.
Exactly. The idea of thinking and analyzing declines. And so you no longer have that ability.
Your ability to do it. So think about it. If instead of me riding a bike every day, the machine started riding the bike for me. I sit on the bike and I press a button and now it does it. Well, guess what? And in 20 years, my leg strength is going to be a lot less.
Exactly.
My bike ride's going to look just as good. I'm going to cover just as many miles, right? You say, well, he still bike rode for 10 miles, right? Yeah. Well, guess what? My legs are going to be totally atrophied.
He must be in great shape. And let me know.
Exactly.
You're not in great shape.
I won't actually be in great shape because I didn't actually use the muscle.
Yeah. No, it's a dangerous path. It really is. I mean, again, there's some things that can.
I mean, we were on very much during the COVID years on there are going to be detrimental impacts to shutting things down for too long.
Yes.
And 4 years later, there are indeed detrimental impacts for shutting things down for too long. Absolutely. We talked about it with small businesses mainly, but we talked about this as well. And sometimes you don't see the ramifications immediately, but you see them down the road.
Yeah. And it's and I always remember when you guys were like in grammar school talking to teachers, the building blocks are right there. In other words, if you ignore the foundations, some kids just struggle understanding mathematical concepts, right? And they're just too young. In other words, their brain wasn't able to get there yet, right? And I said, give them a little bit of time, right? And you see how, boom, it's just the light goes off, right? And that's the thing. If you ignore the foundation, they just keep going. It's like a house. Don't put a foundation out, but keep going up, and sooner or later it collapses, right?
Yeah.
So
we'll see what happens.
So that's it. That was just, I read that and I said, that's not good.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
For long term, that's what that factors into your long term economic growth. Can you put a number on it? No. But it's there. It's there because long-term growth is the productivity of the worker combined with the capital. And if the productivity of the worker is not there because we can't think for ourselves, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that's right.
But alrighty, on that note.
Well, it's been good.
It's been good.
I always enjoy chatting with you.
Same here. Same here. I think our next show is probably going to be... Oh, no, we've got one in 2 weeks. We've got one in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's not, I wasn't sure if that was Thanksgiving, but we've got one in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so what day that is?
So that's the 20th.
20th, okay.
20th. So we will be seeing people then. But until then, I always love being here, chatting with you. It's always good. Appreciate, of course, Matthias, you own Realty. Ford Adelante, we love I Love CVille Network, Judah behind the camera, doing the magic. Emergent Financial Services, our great presenter, and love being here with you. Love the audience. Thanks everyone who tuned in. Be sure to send us any questions, comments, thoughts.
Yeah,
feedback.
Even afterwards. Yeah, send us.
Even afterwards, feel free to do so. We look forward to seeing you all next time. But until that time, hasta mañana.